COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Well, g'day folks, how you going? I don't know how this connection's going to go tonight. She's a bit shaky, but I do know we are on Rumble. So hello to everybody in the chat in Rumble. I can see you. If you see me looking up over here, it's because that's where the chat is for that. Everybody else in the chat down here on my right, hello, good evening, and I hope you've had a bloody good day. It's nice to see that Rumble is actually working. Last night's show, if you are looking for it, isn't up on Rumble yet. I've actually had 3 goes today trying to upload it. That's in part why these connection issues are perplexing. I took it down off YouTube, I don't know, about an hour after the show last night, simply because I didn't want to lose that channel as well. Of course, after Darren came on the show last time, I lost Voice of Freedom. They just hadn't got to the Nun 2K channel yet to take it off there. So I ducked last night and made it private. So with the thought that it was already up on Rumble, unfortunately not. And it must have pissed off Facebook because they've taken it off the Wake Up Facebook channel as well. So thanks very much, Facebook. I think I must have only been back on maybe one day, if I'm lucky. So anyway, they don't like me talking about the things that we talk about. So just having a bit of a look in the Rumble chat. All right, nobody's asking any questions. Good to see you're all good to go. I'm happy for us to try and kick off. Is there anything of any major interests that anybody has thrown up in here? No, people are wanting Phil. Leave Phil alone. Well, I'm always happy to have John on. Always happy to have John on the show. So I've reached out a couple of times to him, and I will reach out again before Christmas. In fact, I was just talking to Rachel today, so she's off seeing him now. So hopefully she'll pass on a good word for me, and we'll see. There's nobody I won't really have, on the show as such. Yeah, there are people I won't have on the show, but none of the ones that have already been on the show, I'd have them all back again. No problems at all. There is no problem, division. There's none of that, or at least not from my side, and I'm pretty confident not from his. He got very focused on a few other things and was going down a different path, and it's not a path Well, it's not that I'm not interested in it. I am, but I just don't have the time to take it on. So he's doing what he's doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. Everybody else is doing what they're doing. And hopefully we're all doing the right thing, or at least pushing for the right thing to come around eventually. But yes, my door here at the Voice of Freedom is always open to the wily old pirate. Always very happy to have him. And it is Christmas time. So, and I do have, wait one moment. I do have, can you see that? It's not the world's greatest stopper, but that's actually holding in a cork in the top there. I do have some very fine whiskey. Thank you to our lovely mate, Sean Ambrose. John and I can always share a whiskey. That's a lot of whiskey. At any rate, maybe that's what you're going to do at Christmas time. Whatever you're going to do at Christmas time, be safe. Maybe you're just going to be working on through it like most people will. There'll be a few that head off for holidays. God, how wonderful that's going to be, particularly if you had plans of heading up north of Cairns. So thinking of everybody tonight in the north of Queensland, the area between Cairns and Cooktown is where Jasper is coming across. And I think it's pretty much coming across as we speak. They've been getting big rain and not necessarily, well, by cyclone standards, reasonable wind. Not big wind, but reasonable wind. We can be thankful that outside the Daintree and that sort of that Daintree area, Port Douglas, there isn't too much population. There might be a bit on the islands offshore, but there's not too much onshore. So there are cyclone shelters all over the place too. And I'm sure while there will be destruction, it won't be as bad as it could have been had it come across at one of our major northern cities like Townsville, Cairns, Mackay, somewhere like that. So I'm sure that there are crops and whatnot that are going to take a punishing, and roads are going to be flooded. Houses might take a battering, whether it's the wind ripping them off or a tree coming through your kitchen window. We're thinking of you tonight, everybody up in Far North Queensland, as you're dealing with that. You're probably not watching this show, so hopefully, in retrospect, when the solar batteries kick back in tomorrow and you've got something on in the background while you're cleaning up, just know our thoughts are with you. All right, let's get into this thing for tonight. I don't have a great deal of terribly new stuff. There is some interesting things going on in America at the moment, which are Congress-related, I think is the best thing to say. Now, some of you will have seen a lot of photos like this come out in the last few days from different people. It's interesting and about bloody time that the child sex trafficking and associated industries are gaining more mainstream media spotlighting. And while I can't say I've seen that on too much mainstream media, or this one, how awful is this? Children's overalls in, pink and whatever it is, pink. Only one left. Sitting in 4 people's carts, they just hadn't pressed the button for $35,210 US. Now, these are the sorts of things that I'm not sure you can still buy, but have been able to buy on the likes of Etsy. Have you used Etsy? I've used Etsy. I bought some camera bits and pieces, lights and stuff from Etsy. Makes you sort of sick in the stomach a bit, doesn't it? We've all seen the pictures from Walmart as well. Finally, in the last few days, in the last week or so, attempts have been made to shed more light on child trafficking and the people who may or may not be involved behind it. Now, there has been a US Congresswoman who has been pushing very hard, but the Democrats have overwhelmingly supported themselves not to support her and have refused to subpoena the records of the flight logs, I beg your pardon, for Jeffrey Epstein's plane, the Lolita Express. But there has been new movement in the last day or so from Tim Burchett. Now, he is a congressman who has written to James Comer, the chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, and he has requested that they subpoena the flight logs. Now, if you've been following at all these inquiries in America and these oversight committees, or the Oversight Committee is but one of them, the other one, of course, that I follow with great interest is the Judiciary Committee. Jim Jordan is the chairman of that at the moment, but will only be the chairman of that, I think, until the end of next year. And you've got to remember that next year is going to be an election year, so they're all going to be out politicking rather than making decisions. You really only get 2 years, I think, in any particular government. If you've got a 4-year cycle, you really only get 2 years to actually do things. In the first 12 months, you don't really get to do much. You get to blame your predecessors for everything while you look after your mates and spend a bit of money in the right places. In the next 2 years, that's where you really steal your money from the people and pretend you're doing things for them. And in the 4th year, well, then it's all about telling lies to the people's faces again and convincing them that the lies they told 4 years ago were fulfilled, or if not fulfilled, would be this time. And convincing those people, the hands of which they are shaking, that they're not lying again. And yet, I choose to believe that there are more of us smart enough to know that that's what's going on with our politicians these days, to know that these people could never be elected, should never be elected. And yet, trudge off on polling day and there'll be queues to line up there and get their name ticked off a roll and, put their mark on a bit of paper for them. Very sad indeed. Very sad indeed. But anyway, Tim Burchett is going to get a rise out of the head of the Oversight Committee on that one, I think, and he will gleefully jump at the opportunity to subpoena the flight records. One would hope. If he isn't, maybe the next person to go to is Jim Jordan, because that would be pretty significant if Jim Jordan decided that the Judiciary Committee wasn't going to subpoena those records. Although I guess it may fall under purview, what they can and can't look at. So it might be something that I need to think about a little bit. Now, there's been a lot of news about celebrities disappearing, celebrities getting sick, celebrities passing away. One celebrity from The Big Bang Theory has just put out a bit of messaging about her situation. Now, this is the star I'm talking about, not the Kunal on the left, but the lovely lass on the right. Now, I think her name is Mikuchi. I've forgotten her first name. Isn't that awful? At any rate, she has let out on X that she is about to go under the knife for lung cancer surgery. Thankfully, they got it really early and shouldn't be any problems, but they're going to go and cut a chunk out of her lung. Weird, she said. Weirdly, never had a cigarette in my life, she said. Bells aren't ringing. Bells aren't ringing. Nearly tried to turn that into a Christmas carol. Careful. Some news about Barnesy today. He's going to undergo open heart surgery again because he has a bacterial infection. Now, that bacterial infection has gone and infected the valve that he had, a perfectly good working valve a few weeks ago. It's gone and infected that valve to a point where it needs to be removed and replaced again. He did have some open heart surgery some years ago. Many of you will recall. Of course, Barnesy, big supporter of the Jibbity Jib. And look, I feel quite torn about what I say and how I say it, particularly around celebrities, particularly around people who have played such a large role in your life and my life. If you're an Australian and you grew up sort of from the 80s onwards, then Jimmy Barnes, Cold Chisel, have played a role of some kind in your life. You love them or hate them. And that may have changed over the years quite a lot. But with what we've started to learn about the contracts involved with music, and if you don't understand that, go to YouTube and have a look. Type in Tom McDonald clones and watch the video. Better still, bring up the lyrics. And he will tell you the story of the music industry, which is pretty shocking if you're going to make it to the top. It makes me wonder about one-hit wonders. Those songs that were huge. You remember instantly. If I say 5705, a lot of you are going to say, what? 5705 was the name of a song out of the 70s. One-hit wonder, band called City Boy. I did actually put a little music trivia line in the Rumble chat yesterday. Instead of writing a little blurb about what the show was about, I just wrote, I've been driving all night, my hands wet on the wheel. Points if you recognize where that came from. Many of you will go, oh, no idea. Some of you will go, oh, yeah, it sounds familiar. And some will go, oh, shit, that's Radar Love Golden Earring. So you can see that I have been working on radio songs and stuff a bit lately, so they're leaching over into other parts of the job. So I'm apologising up front for that. But it leaves us in a position with what do we put on the radio station? And when an artist dies, and not that Barnsley's passed on yet, and we're not quite sure about Farnsey. Nobody's seen him in public, but very plausible excuse not to be in public. We got so much enjoyment out of the music, and yet the music was used to program us in many cases. And I'm not accusing Barnsley or anybody else. I'm just speaking in general terms here about the popular music. Let's call it from the 50s on, rock and roll. Well, there's a couple of really good movies you can watch on this because they've been telling the story of how musicians, successful musicians, become successful musicians for years. There's a great movie starring the Karate Kid. No, not the new one, the old one, who's now old like us, called Crossroads. You can go and watch that. And that's the story of a young bluesman who wants to, be the top of his career, if you like, at the top of the game. And he has to walk a road. And he comes to a crossroads where he meets a man who offers him a contract for success. He pushes back against it. There's a battle between the guy who offers the contract's best guitarist, best bluesman, and this Karate Kid dude. Won't tell you how it works out, but if you watch the movie, it does tell you the plot. There are a lot of things they're telling us in movies at the moment. That Leave the World Alone, or whatever it is that we've been chatting about, the Obama produced, or executive produced, I should say, Netflix movie, which a lot of people are raving about. I haven't seen the end of it yet. I'm only sort of up to basically halfway. And I will try and get to it tonight because a lot of people are saying, oh, you got to finish it, you got to finish it, you got to finish it. Well, yeah, I've actually, I don't know how it finishes, but I've heard from some people who have watched it all, and some are saying, gee, wow, and others are saying, what the? It just kind of ends. So I will give it a look. That way we can have a conversation about it. I know a lot of you have seen it. It does seem to be coincidental, doesn't it, that that particular program comes out just after the shock world news that China is desperately hacking into big systems, big supposedly secure systems inside the US, so that in the event of any kind of hostility, they can pull the plug on everything from light, power, and petrol to banking, finance, and everything else. Can you imagine how long it would take America to descend into, the Wild West, I guess, without power, without access to funds or food? It would be a very bad thing. So if the CCP have actually gained that capability under Joe Biden's watch, then, my God, the people who are responsible for letting that happen, I'm sure, will face the wrath of the American people. And shit, so they should, got to say, so they should. The Italian people might get the opportunity. The Italian health minister who gave orders to conceal V passings away is now under investigation for murder. It is him and one other person. They deliberately, with malice and aforethought, gave directions to Italian health professionals to obfuscate data, to hide deaths, to attribute them to other things, particularly if those deaths occurred post jibbity jab and within a reasonably short time frame. Now that bloke, who at the time was the Italian health minister, he now isn't, has been arrested and bailed, I believe, with well, it's not. I think he's been advised he's being investigated. So whether there's bail involved, but he was certainly picked up, and they've had a chat. So that comes from somebody directly in Italy who is following this, and it is making what for us is probably the edge of mainstream media news, like their version of Sky News, if you like. So it's making that, and there is apparently a lot of noise in the print or online print media about it. So we may well see more interesting things come up out of that over the next little while. I hope that is to be the case, because we need to start kicking a few goals. I mean, you might remember that I have a big hope that at some point in the not too distant future, something similar might happen to this.
The world is engaged in the largest clinical trial, the largest global vaccination trial ever, and we will have
Yeah. I can't wait until we see the knock on his door. I'm not saying it hasn't happened yet, just saying I haven't seen it yet. So Zelensky has been running around the world begging, no, not begging, he's telling world leaders to give up their money and just send it to Ukraine. They are fighting for democracy, after all, protecting the world from it. And to quote him, you should not be building roads. You should not be building schools and hospitals. You should be sending and spending your money on drones and tanks and weapons and sending them to us. Serious about it. And of course, right now at the moment, the reason he's out begging or telling everybody that they must be contributing to this war is because the bill that the US normally pays is overdue. And in fact, they want to spend more money, particularly those crazy bastard Democrats and rhinos who love funding the war machine. Now, it is the US military-industrial complex that is keeping the price of silver down. It is the US military-industrial complex that's playing this game with all of us. It seems like the new Speaker of the House, Mr. Johnson, is more than happy to help Ukraine and the US military-industrial complex by giving money, but he's been asking the Biden administration for clarification on it since he got into office.
Thank you all for being here. Just had a good meeting with President Zelensky. I reiterated to him that we stand with him and against Putin's brutal invasion. The American people stand for freedom, and they're on the right side of this fight. I have asked the White House since the day that I was handed the gavel as Speaker for clarity. We need a clear articulation of the strategy to allow Ukraine to win. And thus far, their responses have been insufficient. They have not provided us the clarity and the detail that we requested over and over since literally 24 hours after I was handed the gavel as Speaker of the House. And so what the Biden administration seems to be asking for is billions of additional dollars with no appropriate oversight, no clear strategy to win, and none of the answers that I think the American people are owed. I have also made very clear from day one that our first condition on any national security supplemental spending package is about our own national security first. The border is an absolute catastrophe, and this is because of the policies of this White House and this administration. We had 12,000 illegal crossings on one day last week alone, on Wednesday. We have almost now 280 known terrorists that have been apprehended at the border. None of this counts the gotaways. If you add the numbers up, it's almost 7 million people who have been encountered at the border just since President Biden took office, and at least 2 million gotaways. This is twice the population of my state of Louisiana. Fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans age 18 to 49 in this country. Fentanyl poisoning, because it's allowed over the border. We have human trafficking and all the other terrible things. In the last 3 months, October, November, December alone, we've had more illegal crossings at the border than in any entire year during the Obama administration. The American people see this, they feel it acutely, they see all the terrible societal ills that come from this, and it must be addressed. So I've made this very clear, again, from the very beginning, when I was handed the gavel. We needed clarity on what we're doing in Ukraine and how we'll have proper oversight of the spending of precious taxpayer dollars of the American citizens, and we needed a transformative change at the border. Thus far, we've gotten neither. The Senate has been MIA on this. The House passed H.R. 2 6 months ago, more than 6 months ago. It's been sitting and collecting dust on Chuck Schumer's desk. I have told him personally, I've told the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, that these are our conditions because these are the conditions of the American people. And we are resolute on that. It is not the House's issue right now. The issue is with the White House and the Senate. And I implore them to do their job because the time is urgent and we do want to do the right thing here. With that, I'll
the House in session.
Ah! There you go. Seek and you shall find. Hey, I'm just waiting to see if Rumble comes back on, but everything here just power stayed on, but every screen in front of me just went black. Then I got back the Rumble screen only to see that it too was black. It doesn't look like it's returned yet either. I'm guessing that I'm back with you guys. Oh, hang on. Maybe I've got to hit. Let's see. Okay. Rumble is doing some weird shit. And that screen is definitely playing up. Let me try and get down to the bottom of the chat here. So you guys saw all that, didn't you? It just froze or died for you, just went to a black screen. Yeah, Bradford, that's it. Leave the world behind. Alana, Fonzie was outraged for us using his protest song for a protest. Yeah, so outraged, in fact, that it wasn't his song. And the people who did write it got outraged that he gave their permission to use it when he doesn't own the rights to You're the Voice. He didn't write it. He just sang it. So he gets a different kind of royalty for being the performer. But, yeah, the lion's share goes to the publisher, the owner of the rights to the music and the song. It's usually how it works. Now, I don't know how far we got into that Speaker Johnson clip. Probably not all the way, which is a tad unfortunate because it's not one of those ones I can just bring up and pick a point to start in. So my apologies for that. Oh, Rachel, it didn't go black. Has it returned on... I don't think it's returned on Rumble yet. I'm going to try and refresh that whole thing and see whether or not it comes up. Oh, yeah, maybe it is. All right. Well, that or it's still frozen, one of the two. My apologies. Let's see whether or not I can get the other video clip that I'd lined up for you tonight. Now, a lot of people argue about all sorts of different things. And when I say things, of course, I mean conspiracy theories. I just like to give you the opportunity to make up your own mind. Now, whether or not you believe A or B doesn't really matter. If you've believed A all your life and somebody's now trying to convince you of B, nobody says you have to believe it. But it would be nice to think that you might give yourself the opportunity of an open mind to at least hear what they had to say. And that's what I did with this bloke. So, I mean, I have a bit of an interest, admittedly.
I don't want any money for what I'm doing because hopefully this video won't come out until after my death. So I have nothing to gain, nothing to profit by telling you what I'm going to tell you. In 1968, my father was stationed at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico. We lived in Clovis, New Mexico. He was in the military police for over 20 years. And on his deathbed in 2002, we made a recording of what happened. Project Slam Dunk was the name of this. President Johnson in 1968, okay? In Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, he said by the time he got there, that there was already 2 large hangars that were connected. There was hundreds of dump trucks that came in and dumped sand and stone and cement powder was powdered over the top of all that to make it look like a lunar landscape. They had men that fashioned it into a lunar landscape, he said. Okay, I've never known my dad to lie, so this all took me by surprise. You know, what's that all about? So anyway, he said that in front of the airplane hangars was pole framing with large canvas tents that was concealing the inside of the staging area. Inside the staging area, on flatbed trucks, was uncrated the lunar lander that was reassembled back inside the hangars. All of the walls were painted flat black, and the ceilings as well. He was sworn to secrecy by the NSA, and they would put him in prison for breaking that oath. When Dad saw the moon landing on TV, he cried. He said he knew that what he had witnessed on TV was exactly what they recorded in that hangar. There was no reason for them to go flying around and everything. They had detailed high-definition photos of the landing area. There was no reason for them to go flying around to a different landing area that almost exhausted their fuel, except for drama, because everything had gone so smoothly. Nothing, you know, so it had to be something. Anyway, Dad was one of 3 guards that guarded the inside of the front entrance. There was a list of 15 people who could enter. No one else was allowed by order of President Johnson. And here is that list, and I gave it to Bart Seibrow as well. He checked out a lot of these names, and he says he can verify a lot of these people and what they do. And I come across a couple myself. Anyway, President Johnson, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, Werner von Braun, Robert Emenegger, Gene Kranz, James Webb, Joe Kerwin, Dr. Thomas Paine, Glenn Looney, Dr. Christopher Kraft, Dr. James Van Allen, General Trudeau, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Simon, and Grant Norrie. Now, the only 2 that I really have information on is Robert Emenegger. Apparently, he did a lot of video work and stuff for the Department of Defense. So the DoD did know him. Okay, and the other one was Grant Norrie, Norray, I believe. Was to the best of my dad's knowledge, was a like some FBI, CIA, NSA, who knows, something like that. Okay, President Johnson only showed up for the first day of filming. Filming lasted for 3 days, and the entire project was restored to original. In other words, the hangars were all taken apart, the sand was all removed. Dad said there was a lot of building going on at the base, so at the time, so sand and cement powder was never questioned. I can see how they could smuggle that all in within everything else that's going on. Since 2002, I have dug up, I already told you about that, the evidence for the moon landing that I have found. If you go to Google and go to Cannon Air Force Base website, they admit that President Johnson was there. The lunar lander was there. The astronauts were there. I also have verified some of the people on the list were there. I also verified there are a lot of building going on in the base, just as he had told me. And all of this was going on at the same time, on the same date. Dad told me all these things father to son. He also told me not to ever tell anyone what he had said, but he said on his deathbed that he had to tell somebody before he died, because it was just too important not to tell. That's about all I can think of. My dad, he raised me by the book. I know he didn't lie to me.
There you go. Like I say, take things with an open mind. But, and once again, do your own research. Somebody sitting there, I think he sounds a bit like Gene Decode. I think you're right. He does sound a bit like Gene Decode. Alana, thank you for putting this up. Yes, have you got your submission ready, folks? Have you gone and downloaded it? I think Vince put it up on the Voice of Freedom website. There are certain parameters you must follow. You can't write a Bible and send it to them. It can only be 3 pages long. It must be only about the areas that they say they can look into. If you put anything else down, it'll just say, no, well, we're not looking at any of it. So don't give them that opportunity. Read the guidelines before you make the submission, but you have until Friday to get that submission into them, the 15th. So, now speaking of the 15th, not sure yet whether there'll be a show on Friday night. Some of you might know, some of you might not know, most of you shouldn't care. But it is my birthday on Friday. So there has been talk of a lunch, and that lunch might be one of those lunches that turns into a Christmas lunch / dinner. And if that is the case, then I'll probably do a couple of little lives from the phone, from wherever I am, on the Nun 2K channel, but not a proper show. However, that might not come off yet. And if that is the case, then it will be a quiet lunch, or I beg your pardon, a quiet dinner tomorrow night, maybe with my daughter, because it's going to be 37 degrees in Brisbane on Friday. Not exactly the place I enjoy going out, sitting in the sun and drinking warm beer. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, just be aware, if I'm not around Friday night, that's the reason why. We've decided that lunch has turned into a dinner. So that'll be that. Don't go and get too freaked out. What is my opinion on Scientology, Carl? Well, God, in the late 80s, I was doing a radio show in Horsham, I want to say, in the Wimmera district of Victoria. And it was a morning talkish kind of show where I had to do book reviews. And there was this person, I think she was from Sydney, who was a publisher of some kind and could not believe that I was eager to talk about this new book that I'd been sent. And, could I talk to the author? And no, I couldn't talk to the author, but she was authorized to speak on the author's behalf. And I'm like, okay, great. So, who is this L. Ron Hubbard? I asked. And believe it or not, I was pretty stupid. And I didn't really know anything at all about Scientology at that stage, and didn't really put the two together. Oh, okay, so he's a priest or some weird church, but he wrote a book. And it was a sci-fi book, which I found very, very funny. With a lot of similarities to the way we live. Like in the there was a bad organization in this book called the CIA. CIA stood for Coordinated Information Apparatus. I just thought that was clever. And I like the way that they wove this story together. And the hero of the story is just this poor sod of a human being who has the living shit kicked out of him from one end of the universe to the other. And he does actually get to fight back eventually, because it wasn't just 10 books. One book, it was 10. What do they call that? A decology? So it took years and like 4 radio stations in my time to get all the books. And this, author, this publisher, kept following me to the next radio station, even though, it might not be a talk station. I'd still do this little interview with her, and I'd get my free book. And yeah, so I wound up reading the whole 10 books. They made a movie out of that. It was the worst movie ever. John Travolta starred in it. I can't remember the name of it now, but it was a bloody shocking movie. Don't know how you condense 10 books down into 1.5 hours, but couldn't really do too much with that. So I don't know. Beyond that, I did walk into one once, a Scientology center where they had the, come and do your IQ test or come in and have a chat kind of thing. It wasn't a chat. It was sit down and do a test. So I don't know whether I was too smart or too stupid, but I was allowed to leave after the test. So, I think maybe they saw my potential to cause more problems for them than I was going to fix. So that's what I like to think anyway. Yes, I know. There is a lot of things that I didn't know at the time. I mean, bear in mind, we're talking... I'm not even sure Laura was born. So if she was born, she would have only been a newborn. So when this started, so that had put it back in the late 80s. And bear in mind, I was a rock and roll radio announcer. Woohoo! So really looking into book authors and who they were and what they did wasn't really what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a different kind of radio announcer. Not a talk one, and here we go, look at me. So yeah, I didn't have any idea who L. Ron Hubbard was until the Scientology part was introduced to me, and then I started digging around a bit. But I didn't understand the correlation between him and Aleister Crowley either. So no, the things you don't know when you're young and stupid, hey? I did know it wasn't for me. And I guess if you are of a mind, and my mind clearly wasn't willing to accept in a way the thing that L. Ron Hubbard hoped that people reading those books would accept them. I read them as a comedy series, and I don't think that that's what he actually set out to do. So yeah. Deb, you know your parts of the world. 3WM, formerly 3LK Lubeck. Absolutely. 3LK. I grew up first 10 years or so in a little town called Rapanya, which is, 25 Ks up the road from Lubeck. What is Lubeck? Lubeck is a silo from memory. There might be a few more farmhouses gathered around on the farms there these days, but predominantly Lubeck is a silo. And our transmitter, the 3WM transmitter, was out at Lubeck. The 3LK transmitter. Not sure if it's still out there or not. I imagine it would be. It was a pretty good position. And we got taken off air by a beetle. I remember Ray Baker, who was our head technician. Everything went off the air. We had no carrier signal, which is how a radio signal gets out of the don't get technical. Anyway, we had no carrier, we had no nothing, and Ray's a good half-hour drive out to Lubeck to figure out what goes on. Managed to get out there and brought back the culprit for taking off the radio station from the air. It was a beetle that had managed to crawl in between the spark gap on the side of the transmitter, on the side of the aerial. There is an arcing gap there, so it helps with lightning strikes and that kind of thing. Well, the beetle got right in that middle point and created an arc and electrocuted himself with 50,000 volts of electricity. And unfortunately, their shell, that beetle's shell, was as hard. It fried everything out of the shell. But the shell stayed there and stayed wedged, and therefore created a short in the system, took the radio station all off. There you go. Old boring story about Lubeck. My apologies. Having a bit of a look down, your fried beetle is absolutely right, Paul. Oh, yeah, very good point. Yuri Gagarin did have a few issues inside that capsule. The capsule was actually built for a dog, wasn't it? And Yuri Gagarin figured out that he could get a seat in there and sit uncomfortably. Don't think that's. I might be extrapolating a little bit there. Did I avoid the Scientologists? Yes, I did. I've had no interest in Scientology or any of the ologies, if I'm honest, all my life. I'm ologylist. I am ologyless, is the way I was trying to say that. So no. Outside of Church of England altar boy for more years than I care to admit, and that all sort of ended. Well, before I went to boarding school, I think. So, and sort of church for me sort of ended once I'd gone to boarding school or once I left. Mum's still an avid churchgoer, plays the organ, does all that sort of stuff, and I support her in that all the time. I just feel that I can support the Lord in other ways. I don't have to turn up every Sunday and throw money on a plate to him. So it's not just that. I think being an altar boy for so many years, I could actually give you the entire Anglican Sunday service. I could repeat it verbatim. The only thing that ever changed was the gospel and a few of the hymns. So yeah, I could. Got me wondering what sort of Sundays God really has when so many people all around the world file into their little church, all say the same prayers, pretty much the same way. They might sing a few different songs. The sermon will be different. The gospel that week will be different, but it won't be a gospel God hasn't heard before. And you multiply that by all the churches all over the world. It's a pretty boring day for the good Lord. And that's why I think he's open to other ideas outside of Sundays. So I employ that thought now with me. What's going on here, Diane? In 78, took to Scientology house in Malvern. Wow. No, the centre that I went to was actually in Brisbane from memory, and it's quite a large old building. But the testing room was right inside the front door, essentially, so I never got much deeper into it than that. There are, when Brisbane opens up, they do this Brisbane Open Day thing once a year, and I want to say that it opened up to the public one year. It hasn't recently. Also, the Freemasons opened up their temple in Brisbane's CBD during that as well. That's worth going and checking that one out, just between you, me, and the gatepost on the days they open it. If you ever wondered what they're like inside, no wonder they're good builders. I'll just say that. Yeah, Daniel, you're right there. So yeah, that I think is probably one of the best comments of the night. If the prayers are from the heart, the good Lord hears them. He may answer them in strange ways, ways that you maybe aren't expecting, but I'm sure that he hears them. Okay, so my computer is doing some very weird little glitchy things, and just having a bit of a feel of it. It's not overly hot. I've got a fan underneath it and behind it as well, trying to keep things cool. But all the same, I think I'm going to shut down for tonight and try and do a little bit of investigating as to what's going on here. It seems like the Rumble feed is still streaming, so I guess that's all I can ask for. And thank you to everybody watching over on the Rumble channel tonight. Thank you, Sereno, Greenie. Appreciate that. Looking forward to hearing how things go with you, Greenie, and those patches. Had a few people who have contacted me regarding the patches. They've either received mine or they've received the ones that they ordered. One person so far has reported that they got no effect out of it or out of them at all. They were one of the ones that I sent 2 patches to, which I found pretty sad, a bit frustrating. I mean, I've handed out 100 of these patches, and since this is like in this new batch, and you think, oh well, look, one failure out of 100's a pretty good strike rate, but then you think about that's okay unless you're the one, considering we're trying to help people with their pain here. So there are no guarantees in anything, and certainly not with these patches. But if you've tried everything else and it hasn't worked for you, then maybe this will, because it has for others in similar circumstances. And you can see that, Kate's prior videos, Carol's video, and others that I'll bring to you over time. I'm not going to pepper you with this stuff every night, but it is a good news story at times. It's something that's going to put a smile on your face, and I like to be able to do that for you. So yeah, if you're getting patches, if you've got the patches, if the patches are on the way to you, you haven't received them yet, but you hope to in the near future, then do a little video for me. Let me know, where you started out, how you got your trouble, where your pain is, rate it sort of between 0 and 10, and let us know. And then if the patches work, I'd love to see that smile that it puts on your face, the relief that it puts on your face. And I don't have to play all these videos to the people. I'm happy to keep your anonymity for you. But I've got to say, the smiles is what I do this for. It's just wonderful to see the reaction on the faces of somebody where it works. And I've been lucky enough to be around that on a couple of occasions and had quite a few videos sent to me showing that. So makes my heart glow. I love it. So it's my new addiction. Probably not healthy, but hopefully you will be for it. If you haven't checked out the patches, you can do so. If you email me, carl@vofhq.com, I'll point you in the right direction there. I haven't got any more to give away at the moment yet. I'm waiting for my next order to arrive, which I think is just about mostly filled out for giving away now anyway. But if you've already bought some patches from LifeWave, then you're probably going to get an email from me. I said it was going to be last night. It most definitely will be tonight or in the morning. I'm hopeful that we will be able to have a bit of a catch up ourselves and talk about this product, find out what we're going to do here on Sunday night. So if you're part of that, we're going to do a Zoom. So I'll be able to see you for a change. Tim Dwyer will be in that Zoom as well. So he'll be explaining how the whole thing works, which is as much for my benefit as it is for yours. Thank you, Greg, for all your help in your emails. But we're gonna look at how best to proceed forward, so that if you want to make $1 out of this, or if you just want to cover the cost of your own patches out of it, then I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to help that happen for you. So that's what that'll be about, happening on Sunday night. So if you've already bought some patches, or you do between now and Sunday night, you'll get an email that says come along and have a chat with that. It'll be a Zoom chat though, so be aware. I'll just flick back very quickly to have a glance and see whether or not there is any weird questions here. There's always weird questions. Chris, I'm not sure that it was actually directed by them. I think it was directed by a different person, but I found it interesting that it's produced by 17. Don't you reckon that's a bit weird? The executive producers on it are the Obamas. So supposedly they provided the money for it, their first foray into movie making. And yes, Dusty, I'm hearing a lot of talk they might have hacked the US too. Well, look, if they have, it's going to be interesting days. If they've hacked America, you can be damn sure they've hacked Australia. So, Albo's left the door open all over. Oh, speaking of Albo, before I go, I should let you know, if you haven't already figured it out or heard, Albo has really pissed off the Australian Jewish Alliance. Can I tell you that? They have issued a statement. The Australian Jewish Alliance, or I beg your pardon, Association, strongly condemns the Albanese government after it called for a ceasefire between Israel and the terrorist organisation Hamas. Through its actions and words, this government has repeatedly demonstrated that it is no friend of Israel or the Australian Jewish community. In a time of surging anti-Semitism, weak and cowardly leadership from the top sends all the wrong messages. The Albanese government may get some praise from terrorist organisations and anti-Semitic groups, but it's made itself irrelevant internationally and will have zero impact on the war. The Australian Jewish Association has warned before the last election of the risks associated with a Labor victory. Our worst fears have been confirmed. The Jewish community will never forget how our government abandoned us. We note that Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Foreign Minister, that bloke Penny Wong, still haven't bothered to visit Israel to show solidarity following the horrific massacre of October 7. We thank Opposition Foreign Affairs spokesman Simon Birmingham, who is currently in Israel getting his battery changed, as well as the opposition for demonstrating true leadership at this time. As with the Nazis or ISIS, there must not be and will not be a ceasefire with Hamas. The only options are for their total surrender or complete annihilation and return of over 100 kidnapped Israelis. With a government that is so weak on foreign policy, Australians will rightly be concerned about how they would handle national security issues in our region. That comes from Robert Gregory, Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Jewish Association. Wow. Haven't they turned? Albo, well, because Albo said, oh, look, fair go, Israel. It's just, shit. Stop shooting them. That's all he said. Just for a little while. Oh, no. Now, of course, all of Australia's anti-Semitic. Can you hear the violins going in the background? Can you see the words, the verbiage that they're using, the story they try and weave, the emotional string that they tug on? I think it's weak. Would have expected. I mean, I pretty much stand by everything they say. Albanese's a gutless, weak little prick surrounded by a bunch of criminals, also gutless, weak little pricks. But that's a bit strong. And you can take that however you'd like. Have yourself a bloody good night, folks. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do. I think I've answered or seen many of the questions. Most of. Looks like they're down the end there. All right, guys, you have yourself a bloody good night. Tomorrow night, we'll be back again, God willing. If all things are equal in a beautiful world, you will be floating around too. We would love that. And we'll catch up. It is coming up to Christmas. Okay. Speaking of that, some of you are going to get Christmas cards. Just saying. Just saying. Some people got an envelope with 2 patches in it. Some people are going to get Christmas cards. Please don't think I'm playing favourites. It's just how it is. I was out today. I had a very startling moment of clarity where I found I could buy those cards cheaper than I could buy envelopes. And I was in such a rush to get home that I got nearly collected by a dickhead. Although this one was pushing a trolley from Coles at the time.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!